We're going to be talking about Office 365 today. My name's Dale. This is Anthony.
Hello.
We actually work most of our time on Surface products, so we have some Surface products out, and we'll have a Surface session later, but we are double timing today, and we're also talking about Office. Conveniently, we know a little bit about Office also. I'm going to kick us off and talk some general things that apply to all of the Office suite, and then we're going to go into the Waffle, and we can go product by product. We will spend less time on things like Word and PowerPoint and Excel, which we assume you know pretty well already and have for some period of time. And we're going to spend more time on other ones. We're very open to feedback in terms of ones that are particularly interesting to you and you want us to spend more time on. It's absolutely fine. We don't have slides. We're going to go, so that's why your feedback's super important. So if you're like, hey, spend more time on Delph, that was interesting, great, we can do that. So make sure this is interactive. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we've done with Pen because it applies across all of Office. And I know not all of you have Pen today, but as you continue to, things continue to move forward, it will become more and more possible or prevalent. So I at least want you to know how Pen is integrated across all of this. And you're going to see us doing it with Pen potentially. So just know that. So we have, as you may know, there's studies that show people learn and retain knowledge better when writing than typing. And there are some fields of study that typing is really challenging. So I'm an engineer, so doing math on a keyboard is really hard. Doing chemical equations on a keyboard, also very hard. Drawing diagrams on a keyboard, pretty hard. You get the point. So there's places where we need something that's not a keyboard. Today, as I can see, a lot of you are using pen on paper, which is fantastic because it works really well. And so that's why we do it. What we've been trying to do in integrating across the Office suite and other products is can we get you to use this instead of that? Now, why is this important? Because now it's immediately digitized. So as you start, part of the point of Office 365 is that you can access it from anywhere and you can collaborate with other people on the same stuff at the same time. Now that's really hard to do if what you've done is written with pen on paper, because I can't see that if I'm over here. And then there's a process that you have to go through, obviously, to make it so I can see it, which takes time and effort. If you do it digitally on your screen already, now, if you have writing like me, we can convert it into text, and then everyone can see it, but it's already there, and it's already in the cloud, and now it's instantly shareable, and now we're all collaborating faster. So that's one of the reasons why we've integrated Pen. And so know that we've tried to make Pen a first-class citizen. So if I go to, you don't really want to see that probably, but we can go all the way down here. So I was taking some notes the other day. You can see that I have text and handwriting. Well, that's not my handwriting. My handwriting's worse. But the point is here, this is a OneNote document. How many of you have used OneNote? Okay, so I'm going to guess that's a little over half. Thank you, that's great. So for those of you that don't know, OneNote is a digital filing cabinet. So across the top, you can see my big files I have. Those are not very interesting files, actually. And on the right, then I have little pages within those files that I'm keeping notes for myself. Now, I can start to take notes. So I can say here that Anthony, who's right there, is going to be the star of this show. As always, he always is the star of the show. Okay, now I am now writing, but at the same time it's saving automatically to the cloud. So if I have given you access to my OneNote, all of you are seeing this at the same time, and you can start to edit and say, actually, Anthony is not the star of the show. And that's fine too. You can make that change real time, like I just did on my screen, but you can do it on your screen. So that's why we've started to integrate Pen into everything we do, okay? So let's talk a little bit about OneNote since I'm here. OneNote was created to be a note-taking program, shockingly based on that name. What it has evolved into now is it's really how I organize my life every day. Now you can use other apps to do that. I'm not saying you have to use Office, but it is free and it's provided with what you have, which is convenient. It auto-saves to the cloud. You can access it from your iPhone or your Android phone. So you can access it from multiple different touch points. So you can get, which makes it so that now it can be pervasive in what you do. I can actually give permissions to different folders So, right, I could say, I want this folder to share with Anthony, and he and I are going to iterate on something on here. And then I could make a different folder, so we all shared it, and we're all working on stuff. And then I could make some other folders private for just me. That's been hugely important in education, particularly in K-12, but we're seeing it in higher education as well, because a professor or staff, you may be working on a project, so you want to share things. Like if you're a professor, you've got you want to share what you talked about that day, because maybe not everyone can make it, or some people were sick. Great, you can all put it on one page and share it. So there's probably other things like people's grading or comments on papers you don't want everyone to see, and so then you can lock down that page for just the Anthony, and I can give him feedback on his poor report that he just did. Now, and from a staff perspective, right, again, we may all be working on a project, 4 or 5 of us, great, we can share that tab, everyone can work on it. But then there's other stuff that maybe I don't want you to see, and that's fine, we all have those tabs probably, so I can keep that private. So that's a little bit about OneNote and how we use it. There are a couple other things I'll say about OneNote just so you know. There is a Learning Tools tab, which I have not downloaded. So it's a free download.
I'll show them that too.
Okay. Awesome. All right, so I'm not going to talk about it. Perfect. Anything else about OneNote?
No, I'll dig into whatever else we need to.
All right, so I'm going to be done now. Any questions on that? Now we're going to go to the star of the show. Or maybe he's not the star. You guys can determine that later. And I'm going to disconnect. Now we are, another thing you can know that's integrated into Windows, I know this is an Office presentation, but we are now wirelessly projecting. I don't know if you've noticed that. So I am not connected right now by any ports. Anthony, with a $50 dongle, has converted that projector into a wireless projector. So now I can walk around. I don't know if that's good or bad in this layout of room. But in a lot of layouts, right, it may be helpful for me to come back here while presenting. Maybe she's a troublemaker, and I need to come back here and stand by her, and that's fine. I can do that and still project when I'm doing it wirelessly. All right, so now I'm going to disconnect so the star of the show can project for us.
All right. So again, Anthony Ferrari. This is the sales guy. He's a funny guy. I'm the technical guy here, so I'm not going to be as humorous or walk around the room as much as him. What we're going to talk today about is the Waffle in Office 365. So I'm sure anybody that came to this session is familiar with Office in the cloud. It's our service that we're now providing. And the idea around Office, if you think about it historically, it's been, every 3 years they would iterate and have a new release. The idea around Office, and even Windows for that matter, and all of our services, is that we iterate and we update these things on a very frequent cadence. So just for those to be aware, we will now, we've kind of got a memorandum as far as updating Office on a 6-month cadence. So every 6 months with Office 365, you'll see a new release, and all of the products, typically all of the products within this Waffle that we're going to talk about, will be updated with new functionality. So that's a benefit to all of our customers. Again, that's why you opt into a service, so you get immediate feedback put into the product, and then you obviously can recognize a lot of the benefits coming from our R&D. So that's conceptually the idea. Now, I only have, I think, a smattering of the apps that are available in Office 365 today. In addition to this, and actually I'll show you here, so this is mine within Microsoft and some of the things that we use. If I go to the Waffle, which is kind of the topic of, and that is the Waffle on the upper left-hand side, you can see all of the different applications that are also on the right-hand homepage. Additionally, I can go into the store and I can grab different applications as well, or add-ons, if you will. If you think about a good example of that would be DocuSign, right? Everybody knows DocuSign. Maybe I want to add that integration to Outlook, or I want to add it to Word. If you use CRM today or relationship management, there's add-ons for that. There's literally 1,000 different add-on products. A lot of those are incorporated with all of our Office suites, or even SharePoint for that matter, that you can incorporate and also add to your Waffle. The other thing that people don't necessarily realize is we're a pretty open platform, Office is, and we understand that a lot of our customers will leverage different services, not just Office. So you could very easily have for example, your Google suite of products here. And you could have instantaneous login or authentication against all of your Google suite available in this Waffle. So it's not just Office 365. So if there is any customers that have both services, which we often see amongst a lot of the universities, again, this is an IT play in a sense because they're the ones that ultimately have to put the Google services here and authenticate against them. But that's also possible. Additional services that you may have, LMS systems, things of that nature, you could add to this Waffle and authenticate against. So you have a single pane of glass that you could ultimately log into all of these different applications with. So that's just something to consider when you think about this Waffle because it's not just tied to Office 365. So this is a very fluid class too. So I'm going to ask for hand raising and it's to see where we should focus our time and effort on. I have a feeling there's some of these things that probably not a lot of folks use, and just being in education, I know that you probably won't use it all. So I won't spend a lot of time, if any time at all, but I will ask for some hands just to see where some folks are. It sounds like a lot of you guys are using OneNote, so I'll spend a little time on some of the learning tools that we have there so you guys can get a couple more tips and tricks. But it seems like Office 365, everybody's kind of aware. The first two areas, or actually the first three, including tasks on here, are your typical Outlook functions, if you will. So anything within mail, within calendar or people, that's your typical calendar or your contacts that are built in. So if you've ever used Outlook at all, there's basically, this is Outlook in the web for that matter. So I mean, if I go into and look at my email, I'll give you a quick glance. You're going to see that all the same functions in Outlook are accessible here. It's just not a thick client. This is just a web client. What I will say about this, though, and people say, well, why wouldn't I just use Outlook? I see a lot of people gravitating towards this. A, I can get access to it anywhere. B, it's extremely quick, right? So I'm going to see email in this client quicker because it's coming through the web, and then it'll come down to my Outlook client. And the biggest reason I see people actually leveraging the Outlook web client here is for battery, right? Outlook is a great application and it's been around a lot, but it's got a lot of legacy built into it. It's good for folks that want offline capability and they have integrated add-ons and things of that nature, which you could also add on to the web client. But what it does is it definitely uses a lot of processing power and it uses a lot of battery. So if you're having that issue, and I would assume Outlook would be one of those, they would probably be one of the applications that is the biggest culprit of battery life and processing on a device, any device for that matter. So something to consider. You can go to the web, have some of the same functions, and people don't realize that the Outlook web client and any of our web clients that we're creating, we're trying to mimic the functions that you have currently in the on-premise products or the legacy products. So I'll skip through calendar and people. I mean, that's pretty self-apparent. Anybody use Yammer in here? Is anybody familiar with it? Okay, Yammer. So we actually have a couple. I'm going to go into Yammer.
Let me ask a question on that. How are you using Yammer? So is it a way for your organization to communicate news?
Yes.
Okay, is that the main one? Or is it a way for a project group to communicate?
We're using it for project group communication, for collaboration, sharing of documents. And,
Okay.
What? You talk about using Teams.
Yeah, so that's where we're
Yeah,
gonna
so
that's where we're gonna go
I
into.
didn't set it up.
Yeah.
This is helpful, thank you. So we've seen it used both ways, which is great. We're not saying anybody's doing anything wrong, but that's helpful.
Yeah, so you heard the mention of Microsoft Teams, and this was a recent announcement on Microsoft's part with a new collaboration Teams function or hub, and we're going to talk about that because I think that that's going to be pretty prevalent for everyone. Yammer, historically, this is an application that we are, an acquisition we made about 4 or 5 years ago, and this is for basically enterprise streaming of content of group collaboration is kind of the idea. You'll see a lot of overlap with this and some of the other applications. So as you can see on the left-hand side, it's a series of groups that I belong to, right? If I go into the Microsoft Surface group, which is ultimately the part what Dale and I do every single day, you can see the number of members, over 1,000 different members, and this is a collaboration engine for us to work back and forth with one another. There's a client for all of your phones that you can leverage as well. And then you can throw these feeds into what we will typically see is when we have an all hands meeting. These feeds are easy to throw into a website. So if I have an all hands web page that I would go to access this particular meeting, just beneath this, it's quick. It's very quick to grab the URL, throw it in the website, and then you can collaborate around that meeting. That's where this is really used for, is around the enterprise. So when you start talking about the entire school, leveraging this around an event, or an event that you're throwing for not even internally, but you're throwing it for external folks, they can get access to this feed. So that is where we see this at. Now, you'll see that, and again, I'm going to show you Teams. There is going to be some overlap. This was an acquisition we made a long time ago. What we, again, so I don't want to confuse anybody when I show you Teams. I will say, though, that a lot of this function is gravitating towards the Teams application and some, and you'll see that here in a second. But just to go back through this, I'm going and navigating to new conversations, and I can see all conversations. So historically, I can look back and I can search across all my groups that I'm working with. If I want to find something around the Surface Pro 4, I can search for it. It'll pull up all of these results across all the users, any posts that they made. It's a great way to get information really, really quickly across your entire enterprise or your entire school.
And I would say that's probably our recommended use, right? It's a broader, Teams would be for a smaller group.
Teams would be for a smaller group.
Communication.
Yeah, exactly. So in addition to that, you'll see certain things like files, because this is similar to a team component. You can see all the files that have been posted to this group. So when I do a search, it's going to search through all the files, in addition to the notes that anybody would put in here, so any notebooks that they would add to it. So it's a great way to collaborate with others, in addition to find information extremely quickly. So keep Yammer in mind for some of the folks that are using this. Obviously, there's some extreme value, but like I said, when we show you Teams here in a little bit, you'll see that that's an area where we're putting a lot of that same capability, and where we see a lot of our customers gravitating towards, because there's some additional functions to it, in addition to offering all the collaboration tools that you just saw.
So anybody using Teams today? I know we have one. Anyone else?
Is Teams the same things as groups?
No, it's not. And I know I know that could be a little bit confusing, but that's where you're seeing groups kind of morph into the Teams piece. Teams, a lot of folks would not be using Teams right now because it was just recently released, and a lot of folks don't have access to it today. But anybody with Office 365 can make this available to the users. So this would be something that, go back to your IT team, you can ask them to turn this function on, because everybody has access to it today. It's in general availability.
Well, let's see does anybody have a computer here and can look and see if they have Teams available?
Please.
All right, so people, so it looks like they have it already available.
Most do. It just depends if there's a switch, whether it's turned on or off in your Waffle, and I could see if you haven't gone through any training, maybe I as an administrator wouldn't turn it on, because you don't want to add additional confusion to tools that you may or may not know already. So that's the idea.
Be different than groups? Because that page that you were just showing for Yammer looks very similar to the group page.
It does, and I'll show you Teams.
It's very similar to a Teams page too.
Yeah, there's a lot of similarity. What I will say around groups is it's not going to have all of the group functions or add-on capability, or the ease of actually adding individuals to the group or to the team itself. So you'll see that here in a second.
And I think you'll see at a high level, to your point, we do want them to look similar. We want to have a familiar look and feel across the different Office products. So obviously, not going to look like Excel, but the reality is these Office 365 ones should roughly be laid out in a similar way.
Yeah.
Make it more easy to
Yeah,
move from one to another.
you'll see a lot of similarities with those things. Anybody use OneDrive in here with Office 365? Okay, awesome. So I'm not going to go into a tremendous amount of detail. This is for, obviously, the ability. It's cloud storage, in essence. We're doing a lot with OneDrive. For those that historically have used it, one of the things that have been asked for quite a bit is this ability. So I obviously have OneDrive in the cloud, and that's actually a direct point to my cloud storage. On the bottom of my screen, you can see this is the client that's built into the device. This is pretty convenient, because this actually allows me to go into, identify what I want to pull down from that client, or from the OneDrive storage, and have it local to my device. One thing that has actually been available but gone away because there were some issues making it available on Windows 10 and just making it function properly, is this notion of placeholders, basically is what it is. So I've got a ton of different documents, gigabytes of documents or storage in my OneDrive client. I don't want to pull all of that down to my local desktop. I only have so much storage available. But at the same time, in this particular case, I'm only seeing documents. I've got a lot more in my personal OneDrive, but I only wanted to pull this information down to my desktop because I use this a lot. Well, with the addition of placeholders, which has actually been released, but you'll see it pushed out to the clients here within the next probably 2 to 3 months, is it basically provides a shortcut or a link or an image to basically mimic what's in my cloud OneDrive, but it does not pull it all down to my desktop, which makes it nice, right? So in this case, you can see I'm looking at my personal OneDrive. I'll actually give you a better example here. Actually, we'll just stay here on this one. But my cloud storage looks completely different, right? So if I go into my OneDrive cloud storage, this is everything that I have in the cloud. You can see that looks drastically different than what I pulled down in my desktop, right? And so the idea here is now I would have placeholders on my desktop client, not taking up any storage space, but, and I know it's hard to necessarily visualize, but again, having that ability, I could then click on any one of those placeholders and then pull that document down real time from this client. So that's been an ask from a lot of folks around the functions of OneDrive that we've had previously and lost. So that's something that will be coming to your OneDrive client. Any questions around OneDrive? It's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, it's file storage for that matter. Everybody should have up to 1 terabyte of storage in Office 365. It's convenient because you have this client for OneDrive on any one of your devices. So if you want to put it on your phone, it's available on Windows, Android, and iOS, which makes it extremely convenient to get access to all of your information. And folks that are using OneDrive personally today, some things that you don't know, like one thing I see, it's an issue really in a lot of households is, I have multiple cloud storage vendors now. If I've got an iPhone, right, I've got a cloud for iPhone, right? And so the idea, if you want to centralize all of this, iPhone allows you to actually use the OneDrive client and push all your photos or imagery there if you want to have a central storage for all of your devices that you're using. So it's cross-platform, it's a single storage, and you get a lot of it. That's kind of the idea or the takeaway with OneDrive. SharePoint, people familiar with it a little bit? A lot of this is so SharePoint, it's typically for the technicians of groups. They set up, it's a collaboration vehicle for document management, and it's also for portals, so for internal portals that folks will set up. That's kind of the idea. You may be using SharePoint and not necessarily know that you're using it. So a lot of our internal portals are all set up on SharePoint. What it allows you to do is quickly spin them up, quickly provide access to individuals, and it's got a lot of ad hoc add-ons that you can quickly add in case I want to add notes, in case I want to put templates in there. Makes it really convenient to spin up these portals. I can also make them accessible to the outside as well. But the biggest piece of this is I can now secure it. I can only allow individuals to these portals, which makes it nice. And a lot of the things that we build, including OneDrive for that matter, are basically individual portals set up on SharePoint. Is kind of the idea. But it's unbeknownst to the user. They don't necessarily know that's where the storage is coming from. Planner. Anybody use Planner? Anybody familiar with it? Awesome. Okay. So Planner is relatively new to Office 365. Does anybody use Project in here by any chance? Okay.
Has that been released to everybody the last time I checked?
Planner or Project?
Oh, that's what I meant. Project.
You use Project.
I want to, but it hadn't. The last time I checked, it wasn't there.
So it's accessible. It's available. It's just whether or not it's been released to individually to you is kind of the idea. So I actually have Project, I think, in here, or I may have actually removed it. Oh yeah, there's Project right next to it. So again, Microsoft Project is been around for quite a while. That's for heavy. So the way I look at this is kind of on a scale of easy to more complex. Is anybody familiar with like Wunderlist or some of these list applications that you can create? So think about that on the easy scale. I want to create a shopping list. I want to, assign my wife's going to assign me all my daddy do lists. So this is where she does it. We all kind of collaborate. We can invite different people. Super easy, and I have access to it on all my phones. Planner is a little bit different, or it provides a little bit more function in the sense that it's more internal. It's group collaboration or planning within an internal group. And I'll give you an example. Like if I go into, for instance, a surface release planner here, I've created a project, and you can create projects really easily. I mean, it's just a matter of creating a new plan. And then I then create additional buckets, whatever that may be. So in this case, this is a surface release plan. So we release new products. What we want to do is we want to provide maybe ad hoc to-dos. So I want to assign, in this case, I'm the only one that's part of this plan, but I want to do my follow-up. I want to set my due date, and then I want to assign it to myself, or in this case, anybody else that's part of this particular project plan. And then I can add that task there. I've set up other buckets as well, so I have a visionary council that we all want to meet with and make sure we're getting their feedback. We have product group liaisons that we want to talk to and interview as well, so we can get feedback from them. And then additionally, I want to execute some post-launch feedback loops with different individuals or consumers. So that's kind of the idea around this particular plan. At this point, anybody can go into any one of the tasks that are assigned them. When they do get assigned a task, it immediately shoots out an email or communicates depending on whatever their settings are set up for. And then, whether they can set the progress, whether they finished or completed, and everybody is notified that's part of the project plan. They can go back and be notified of that. So this is more in the middle scale between Wunderlist and Microsoft Project, but this is for basically simplistic project plans that you would want to launch and with a group of internal people, ultimately, is kind of what it comes down to. You can see here I can add attachments. And the nice thing about these plans then as well is I can add different conversations or communications that we all will communicate around. I have a calendar of events also that I can get access to. And then if I want to add, similar to the OneNote notebook that Dale had showed you, maybe I want to have a notebook that we're all using for all of our notes and communicating against. I just created this, so let's see if it set up the notebook for me. It actually did. So I'll look at a couple of other things. So you can see the calendar that's associated with this, which basically just sets up an Outlook calendar. So you get all of these functions just by creating that plan real time. And here are all of the calendars set up with all of the different communications or events specific to that particular plan. Yes?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I've never used Planner, but apparently I have, because I did set up a SharePoint site for sharing certain information. And now I'm looking on my phone, just checking Planner, every one of the SharePoint projects I'm involved in. So does it automatically do that?
It will,
Okay.
yeah, in that case.
That's a good thing to tell people.
Yeah. So there's a lot to tell. Yeah, and that's so it will. Well, okay, then I'll take that back. It won't automatically set up plans for everything, depending on whatever your settings are. So in that case, for SharePoint sites, you have it automatically set up plans for everyone. It doesn't necessarily have to happen. So you've got some control over whether plans are set up for each of your groups. This is kind of the concept of groups as well. So in this case, there are plans set up for each time a group gets set up as well, or a team gets set up for that matter.
So basically my question really was, so it looks like, or question, comment, that these interface with each other. So if you are doing something in SharePoint, some of these other tools are easily exchanging information.
They are, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the whole idea, I think, with Office 365, and probably should have said this up front, is, because you're in a single platform, you're able to quickly collaborate between the different applications that you're working. So like, even when I showed Yammer, I could add files for, Excel or any of your Office applications. I could add a OneNote notebook to this. As you can see, these are calendars that you're set up in Exchange. I can add different members that are within my Active Directory or Azure Active Directory that are all here. So it's really quick and instantaneous to actually leverage all of the components within Office 365, real time and extremely quick. So you will see some things set up automated. Yes, ma'am?
So So does it go reverse? If you set up a plan in here, will it automatically set up something in SharePoint?
No, it won't set up a SharePoint site in that case, no. The assumption is I set up a SharePoint site, I add a bunch of different members. It gives me the ability to say, hey, in that case, I want to automatically set up a project plan around this, or not, right? I can turn that function off if I want to. But the assumption is I've set up a portal for these individuals to get access to. I may want to have a project plan associated with that, so it just instantly sets it up. But vice versa, it doesn't necessarily make sense. I may have a plan that's completely separate from a portal that I want to set up for these folks, right? That's kind of the idea. Yes? Please.
I'm curious what the difference is between OneDrive and SharePoint, because you've got OneDrive sites and SharePoint sites.
So OneDrive is going to be specific to an individual user, right? That's going to be, your OneDrive is your cloud storage place.
But I can share that with other people.
You can share things within your OneDrive, sure. I wouldn't recommend it necessarily. You can share individual documents. I wouldn't share my entire OneDrive. I don't even know if you can share the entire
But
OneDrive.
you can make a folder and share that.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so that's true. So you can share individual folders. So you've got collaboration capability within individual files. But the idea around a SharePoint site is more of an internet site or a portal internally. And then so I'll give you an example, maybe just to be helpful. So we set up all of our internal sites on SharePoint. So this is my learning site. So I come in here all the time on a monthly basis, and you can see that I've actually been a good soldier at Microsoft. I've finished all my required training. But the idea here is it consolidates, aggregates all of the training that I have due, and it makes it accessible to me. So anybody, it personalizes for individuals that come in and get access to it, and they'll see what training that they have available. So that's a perfect example. Training that you have on a monthly cadence or weekly or whatever that cadence is. I can also go in and I have different product sites that I have in here. So if I want to come in and look at my office sites, I can come in here, and this is where all of our office product teams will throw information specific for folks like myself or Dell when we want to get our access to information. So that's an internal portal that they've exposed specific to Office 365 or all of our products in that case. So that's kind of the idea.
How did you get that?
And again, this is nothing more than the way they set the navigation. But you can, this is a web page, so I can set that navigation up any way that I set websites up ultimately. This is the way they set it up. You could set it up in a completely different manner. It's nothing more than a website internally.
How did you get that? So it's within SharePoint, a website?
Yep, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah, and they just cascade down to different websites ultimately. It's just an easy method to create internal websites and then give access to internally. I could also set up a SharePoint site and give external access. I don't see that as commonplace necessarily because you typically set up websites for folks externally, but you can give external access. The idea is this is very secure. It's locked down to people within your organization. You know who's accessing it, and you have change management. So if people do make changes within the portal, or anything for that matter, you'll be able to see or document those types of changes that are being made. So if I download something from here, like again, you can see all the Office 365 things. If I were to download any one of these documents, there's record of that. I'm not going to have delete permissions in here, so you're not going to be, but if I did delete it and I had access to delete it, you would have record of that. Typically, you wouldn't see that available access unless you're an administrator in the system.
So let me add two things. One is obviously, and I think you said this, but my training site is going to look different than his training site, right? So same SharePoint, but it knows my credentials, and then I'm given a different set of menus. His stuff is much more technical than mine, but the reality is, right, so it's customized. And then to his point about security, right, so there's a lot of things, particularly on the Surface products, we tend not to announce those things early. And so there's then a bunch of information that's on SharePoint site that's locked down to very specific people. So he and I can't get access to them because we're not allowed to, because it's top secret stuff. And then, so that's the first part, that's the preventative security, right? So we don't have access. If somehow we get access, then they know who got access, which is the reactive security, right? And so then there would be complications for him and I in that case. But we use that from a security perspective all the time, in terms of, hey, what he and I work on, no, but right? We have a bunch of product teams in Redmond working on a bunch of stuff that they don't want everyone to know about all the, and they want to determine when people know about it, and so they lock things down this way.
What about access for a specific period of time? Let's say a group of students for a semester.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know how, I mean, I have not seen time
Or is
constraints.
SharePoint not the right vehicle for something like that?
Yeah, well, SharePoint would be. You could use it for a portal, you know, for an internal portal. That would be good.
Well, you can absolutely do that, but I don't think you
Just-
can set the time. I think
The
you have to
time
add them, and then you have to go in and delete them. I don't think you can say add them only for 6 months.
I would just delete them.
Yes.
Yeah.
You would remove their
That would
access.
be the- All right.
And again, it's the same thing, right? I used to work on the Redmond product team, and I had visibility to the Surface roadmap. Well, I don't anymore, so now they don't think I'm trustworthy, so now I'm not on that list, right? So they went in and they took me off that list.
Okay, exactly. All right. I
Okay.
think that was a class list, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Specific group of students for that semester, for this project. What?
SharePoint would be a good vehicle for that. When we launch Teams, and I'll show you that. That might be, so the idea, again, so this is a portal. Oftentimes for the setup of these portals, you typically are a little bit more reliant on, I mean, you could set them up yourself, right? But typically I see someone in IT generally having the access to set up portals, although individually you all have the same access. It's just your comfort with setting up a portal. The nice thing about this is it's kind of a WYSIWYG to where I can drag and drop different things. But if you're not familiar with SharePoint, might not know what those different things are necessarily. Some of them are self-explanatory, like, hey, I want to set up a chat related to this, or I want to set up a document library or list here.
Yes.
But there are other things that are more web-centric, if you will, that, you know, even myself, I don't necessarily set up SharePoint portals. Teams, on the other hand, are very common to set up amongst end users, or power users for that matter. But you, like I said, with SharePoint, I often find folks that are using SharePoint, they just don't realize it because a lot of their internal portals are set up on that. It just makes sense.
To reinforce that, have you ever set up a SharePoint site?
I have not.
And neither have I, right? So he's very technical. I'm not as technical. But the reality is, right, we work for a technology company. We're doing technology stuff all the time, but we've never set up a SharePoint site. That reinforces the point, I think, that there's an organization that tends to set that up, which is not us. Tends to be central IT,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So even true in our case.
But I do not want to scare anybody to thinking, because they've made SharePoint so easy, if you have access to set up a portal, you could actually quickly do it. It's not super difficult. It's just to set up something as granular as what I just showed you as my internal website, probably a little bit more complex to do that.
I have a small group that I set up a SharePoint website for.
Uh-huh.
But I have external business partners that I want to bring in, but I don't want them to be able to necessarily see all of the
Oh,
documents.
okay.
Can I give them access for a temporary period of time for just
Some of the portal itself?
some of the documents, or just maybe a
You-
folder that
you-
only just one folder?
You can, yeah, you can do that. So, yes, and that's where it gets a little bit more complex. If you're going to take a portal, give somebody access, but then minimize the access that they have to a single document or a single section on a portal. Because if you saw what I had showed you previously, there were actually different sections of that. There was a document library. There was an area where it's capturing feedback from the end user. There's other things for collaboration where I can set up a chat pane. You know, when you start getting into that, that gets a little bit more complex. But yes, that is an area that you can secure it. And that's kind of the idea. You do have that extra layer of security where most other applications or portals, it's just all or nothing. That's kind of the idea. So SharePoint will allow that.
You can also add security by document. So you could do it that way for additional levels of security, right? You could say this document can only be opened by these people,
Yeah. No.
which you don't need SharePoint to do, but that would be an additional level of security.
Is there an option of one-way or two-way accessibility? And what I mean is, can they only see and not add?
Yes.
Can they only add?
Yep. Yeah. Well, the add and see, right? It's kind of
Yeah,
it
yeah.
adds onto it. Yep. Yep. And then there's some with full option to delete and edit, which typically it's just the admin of that site.
And that's not just a SharePoint comment. So if I have a OneDrive file that I'm sharing with Anthony, I could decide to give him write privileges or just read privileges. So it's not just a SharePoint comment.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty pervasive with all the applications. SharePoint, in fact, will have more security options available to you than most will. That's generally what he had mentioned, is just read, write, or edit on top of everything. SharePoint will give you a little bit more granularity in terms of what you can do. You can actually dictate what specific security I want in different areas of things, which is why it kind of differentiates as a portal piece. So project, it's difficult for me to show this in the sense that Microsoft is actually restricted because nobody, I don't need access to project. I'm not a PM, and I'm not going to do a lot of complex things. They get, for somebody like me in my role, that I would do, similar to the plan that I set up for you, I would do some very basic project management or planning. But project, although accessible to me here, it doesn't actually give me a lot of access to any projects right now. So this actually reroutes me. It's asking me, hey, do you really need this? So I'm not spending my time in other areas where I really don't need to, because historically, Microsoft Project has been for very heavy-centric project planners that need a much deeper level of functionality than what Planner would provide. So even if I did have access, I really wouldn't be able to navigate through Project. But that's kind of the idea. If you need something additional to what I just showed you within this planner, right? And here's kind of a chart of, hey, here's my overarching plan. Here are the number of tasks that I've completed or haven't completed. These are the ones that are unassigned tasks, what's in progress, whatnot. And then I want that distributed out to the people that are members of that plan. If you need something more than that, right, that you need integration with other systems tied to something like this, you need timesheets tied to things like this, that's where Project would be a much better fit, because that's enterprise grade project management solutions. And I can't even speak, there's a lot of bells and whistles to it. It's been around a long time, and they've added a lot of features and functions to that application.
When you say that you can request it, does it cost money?
Project does, yeah. Similar to Office, all of the Office suites had kind of were your typical Office applications. Project was always something that required an additional price point to it. And that's kind of the way it is here as well. You purchase it additionally. Tasks is pretty straightforward. This is just the tasks that you create in Outlook, so I'm not going to go through that. So, I mean, you have your calendar and appointments. I also have tasks. So if you've leveraged tasks in the past, it's a great function to be able to leverage just kind of different task management for you within your Outlook client. Power BI. Is anybody using business intelligence or heavy analytics today? Is anybody using that at all? Okay. If this is exposed to you, I mean, it's a very powerful tool. We typically see this being leveraged for reports, for data analysts that are actually creating this information. So Power BI is nothing more than information that is being represented either in a graphical form or in the case of, let me actually go here to show you what this would look like.
So let me tell you the most common ways I've seen this used. This one is great. This is our, I think this is our sales report, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, right in the back end, right, Microsoft is a massive organization. And we have a lot of data that's coming in every day. So what happens here is Anthony or I or other people that have access can now look at in a very easy to digest format all this massive amount of data that's come in, which is this chart. So by week, and he can start to filter and do crazy stuff over there on the right. How many sales did Dale make versus Christy, or how many in this week versus that week, or how many of this product line versus that product line. All those filters are there. So certainly sales is one place, for probably not as relevant in university. Another couple places I've seen this used. If you're going to go run a bunch of online advertising, how do you know which ad works best? So if you want to attract certain types of students, or you're zeroing in on a certain geography, and you're going to run 4 or 5 different ads, which one works best? Again, you're getting a bunch of data on the back end. Who's clicking? Are they clicking all the way through, or just as an accidental click? How those things you want to assess? Again, you can create a chart, look at it simply by campaign 1 versus campaign 2 versus campaign 3. You can start to get into, we're seeing school districts do this about how does attendance correlate to grades, or how does teacher A on the same subject, so biology 101, just made that up, How does Professor A, what are the outcomes of Professor A students versus Professor B students? Are they teaching the curriculum differently? So you can start to now assess, because of all this data you have, you can start to surface it, no pun intended, and you can then look at it in a super easy to digest way. So I gave you a few examples. I'm sure there's hundreds more, but the reality is, the problem we tend to have is we have too much data and we don't know how to look at it. Power BI helps you take the data you have and look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does the data come into that?
So that's a really good question, and kind of I think so fundamentally everybody should understand. Yes, this is this is the imagery on top of it. There's a data set beneath all of this, right? So beneath all of this, this is either coming from an Excel spreadsheet. This can come from an Access database. This can come from a SQL database. But this is now kind of this is the imagery on top of it that makes it easy to consume. Is kind of the idea, and it's accessible for everyone, right? So that's what we made it. Typically, BI tools that are out there are extremely expensive, very complex to use. I mean, you saw me just kind of navigating and pivoting between different users. You can see how the chart is formatting, so I can quickly make sense of the information that's in front of me, and that's kind of the idea. It's pervasive for everyone, real-time access, and I don't necessarily have to create this. I can share this out, and I can, again, all these are exposed to me. You can see if I look at my workplace down here, I actually haven't created any of these. I don't have any data sets, but I can tell you that I have a ton of these things that have been shared with me, right? So if I ever want access to any data for any information at all, I came from business solutions team, so I have a ton of different information that's shared with me, and assuming I know what that chart is and I want access to that information, this is real-time information coming from a feed. What that feed is dependent on how you get your information. Could be from a website, right? Ideally. But how are you capturing that information from your website? There's some underlying store to that. Most of these are being captured from Excel, and we're using Excel services. So I'm basically building a Power BI chart on top of Excel with millions and millions of records on it. And that's the beauty of this is now you're getting real-time business analytics or intelligence on top of data sets that are extremely large, where you never were able to do that or get that information before. So if you're not seeing this, and you
Are you seeing it?
yeah, is anybody seeing this at all?
Is it
You
there
see
or not
Power
there?
BI?
On your Waffle?
Yeah.
You got it. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I would say of the ones outside of Word, PowerPoint, Excel, this has probably been the one that has most impacted me and what I do every day, because of the power of the data, and now I can actually use it.
Yeah. I mean, that's how we run our business every day, right? It's much easier to do that than look through an Excel spreadsheet and find, how many surfaces have been purchased last week. It's easier to look in graphical information. You'll notice I intentionally skipped over things like marketing and social engagement. And I did this purposely because I don't typically see this in education very often. These are more business solutions. So these are related to CRM suites, but just so you know what they are, if I launch marketing automation or marketing campaigns, that's accessible through what we call Dynamics, our Dynamics suite, and also it's built on the Office 365 platform. So if you imagine a campaign where I want to capture feedback from anybody, whether that's an email campaign that I've sent out, how many impressions did I get, what was the success of that campaign. So that's all done through what's called Dynamics Marketing. In addition to that, I have social engagement. So if you think about social interactions and the things that I want to monitor and capture that information, so maybe I want to monitor a specific feed in Twitter and how successful that is. So maybe we had a Surface launch with a hashtag of Surface, the new Surface Pro. How many impressions did I get? What was the sentiment of that social interaction, right? So now I can gauge social sentiment, how successful that is, and how many impressions that we've got or shares that we've got. And that's across Facebook, that's across Twitter, and all of your typical, like Pinterest is another one. So it reaches all of these different channels of social engagement. So if you're looking for a tool like that, this is a great application, and it's available in Office 365. This would not be exposed as part of your regular Waffle, but this is part of our Dynamics product, and it is ad hoc, so you can get these individually. Yes, ma'am.
So I just want to make sure I understand. So if we're trying to use social media as kind of like a passive training tool, that would be a way in which we could sort of track the impact that it could be
Yes.
having?
Yeah, so you key off of keywords, or you key off of Facebook sites for that matter, right? And how many hits is that Facebook site, or likes is it getting, or how many comments am I getting on that Facebook site or feed? So Delve. Has anybody seen Delve in their Waffle? Most people should, right?
Who's using it?
Delve.
Yeah.
Nobody's using it. All right. Let's talk about it.
This is cool in the sense that, and it's cool and scary for some folks, but once I get through the scary part, you guys will be fine for it.
The scary part is that he's stalking me. And Delve is a way that he stalks me. All right, keep going.
So this kind of goes back to the earlier comment that these are all interconnected things, and you want that, right? You want that in the sense that, in this case with Delve, it shows an aggregate of people that I communicate with oftentimes, right? Or that I am somehow associated with my particular job function. So in that sense, what I mean is, these are, in this particular homepage that I'm looking at, these are all documents that within my network of people. And how does that network get defined? Well, I'm using Outlook. I send a lot of email. I'm sharing documents with other people. So there's a priority list if you think about it, and Office 365 understands that. So they're saying, here's a priority of people that you're working with in your network of people. These are some very popular documents that those folks are working on that people have either accessed or they're spending a tremendous amount of time on. So this is great whenever I want to, hey, I saw a thread with someone that pointed or alluded to a document within an email. You know, maybe you could obviously email them and say, hey, can you share that information? But maybe they're working on a lot of documents and I want to say, hey, what are all the things that you're working on? Can I see what you're doing, right? This is a way for me to go in, pick individual users. You know, Casey's a peer of mine. So I can go into Casey's documents that he's made accessible to the outside. That's the first key. That's the thing that gets scary for folks is, hey, now I got Big Brother that's able to see all the documents that I'm working on. That's not the case. These are all open documents that he's made available either through OneDrive or Sharepoint or whatnot, but we have a pretty open and collaborative environment in Microsoft, so typically you'll see a lot of these documents that we're working on exposed, which makes sense, unless for whatever reason I'm working with the Surface engineering team that doesn't want to give me access to what our new products are. So, but Casey, you know, I could see real time, these are all the things that Casey's working on, and wow, you know, he's, even though we have the same role, he's got a bunch of different documents that he's working on right now around wireless display, or he's got an issue with certain Surface devices that I'm not necessarily seeing, but I may want to be aware of it. So this is great just in terms of seeing what other folks are working on. And it's not just exposed to just the people that are within my network. If I want to get outside of that, maybe I want to look at Margot Day, who happens to be our general manager. I can see all the documentation that Margot's working on as well, right? She's not necessarily in my network because I don't communicate with my general manager all that often, but I could get access to the documents that she's made available. This makes it really nice to get insights to everything that folks are using on a day-to-day basis that I would normally not see or not have any knowledge of. Any questions around that? I strongly recommend, this is a great application to get access to. There's some analytics around this as well. This gives me, and this is powerful, and you can actually automate this to where it sends an email out on a whatever cadence that you want. Lets me know how I'm spending my time. So again, if I need to make modifications to how I'm working, you can see what I'm typically doing on I don't know what this is, it's probably a weekly basis. Spending a lot of time in meeting hours on my calendar, right? Doing a lot of email as well, which I typically do because I'm virtual and I work across 35 different states. but it gives me access to how I spend my time, and ultimately allows me to modify that if I want to be doing or prioritizing different areas. So this actually gets sent out to me on a monthly basis, I think, is what it is. But this is great. And then also, again, similar to that connected network, lets me know who I'm working with typically, my management information, and then people that I've actually lost touch with who I haven't been communicating with. Jordan moved on to a different role, so I kind of get an idea why. But you know what? Lydia, who actually happens to be, she is actually, in fact, my GM, haven't been communicating with her as much, but we're in our last quarter, and that's the reason why. She's got bigger fish to fry than talking to her technician. So, this is cool, just kind of showing day to day what you are doing and who you are working with and communicating with. Any questions around Delve? That's kind of a little unknown secret by folks that they don't realize that that's available and accessible to them. Video is, it is exactly what it said. It's a place where it's not a YouTube replacement. This is internal video for large, it doesn't even have to be large, for a video repository, and it's a way to basically catalog videos as well. This is great because it's extremely quick, it's internal, right? I can go and run a quick search for any video that I'm trying to find or get access to, and from a storage standpoint, there's extremely minimal cost associated with having video. So this is a video repository. We see this used broadly for training, if I want to go and get access to different training videos, but obviously can be used across, there's a broad array of different areas where you could use video today, right? So how you want to create the different channels for video is completely up to you, but this is kind of the video repository, and it's accessible to everyone. Whether it's available or visible, it's completely up to the administrator, whether they want to turn it on. Maybe you have different channels. Granted, I could put these videos on a portal in SharePoint, but this is honed in specifically for video repository.
So if we don't have that, that would be something we'd have to request and pay for.
No, video is accessible to you. Well, okay, let me take that back. Depending on whatever your subscription is, but generally most universities have access to video, is what I've seen. Are you the administrator of your tenant?
So you don't have it?
I don't have it.
So they may be choosing, Central IT may have chosen not to open video up. It's possible.
Yeah, so all of these are not just magically turned on, right? So that's the thing. I mean, as you see, there's a ton of these things, and maybe Central IT doesn't even know that they have video accessible to them or what it is, and they've got different priorities. So what I've seen in the past is just takes somebody requesting access in order to get access to these things that you're seeing.
Is it all included in the cost, or does each one of these add-ons add more?
All included in the cost. The only thing we've discussed so far that's I believe an additional add-on is Microsoft Project. That's the only thing that I've discussed that's outside of. Now, granted, there are different agreements we make accessible, but most college institutions all have the E3 plan with all of these things that are exposed.
But again, there may be a reason Central IT has chosen not to surface a few of these.
Yeah,
things.
I mean, OneDrive's a big one. A lot of times I see that not available to folks because they're using a different cloud document storage. They're
Well, they
using-
just took away Dropbox, so I think a lot of people will be, by necessity, reverting to OneDrive.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the idea.
It's not reversible anymore here.
It's not here?
No.
Okay, so that's,
Yeah,
so they're trying to,
we're using that. And I really like the idea of that video, because as we currently are using Blackboard, but it's so slow
Yeah.
to upload videos. So I think this would have a great use in the classroom in terms of, the instructor having their laptop and just zipping that right on up there.
That's
So
the idea.
I really like that.
and again, that's the thing. Video and speed, that's kind of the idea around video, those two things. And internal, it's not a YouTube replacement or anything like that. We touched a little bit on, so Office, again, I'm not going to get into this. We all use Office and whatnot. The thing that I would like to say, though, around Office is, it's extremely relative to what Dale was talking to before, is these things are extremely robust, and you're seeing, between Excel and Word, but things that people don't necessarily realize is I have write-back capability on Word right now. I have the ability to modify different pens that I'm working with, so all of these things are accessible and exposed. These are new functions. They're consistently coming out with Office applications. The nice thing about Office 365 is it's a service, right? So even though I'm using Word locally on my device, I've got a client here on my machine. Anybody that's got Office 365 is getting real-time downloads for those different clients. And you may commonly see them. Again, it's dependent on what your IT and what they push out. And there's a channel that you belong to as a school, and whether they want a delayed channel, if you will, or they want a current channel where you're getting all of these functions real-time. So that obviously plays part in it. But if you think about the different type of inking capabilities and the types of things that Word is incorporating, it's a lot different than it used to be in 2013 or back in the day. And so you're going to continue to see iterations on these different applications. I welcome you. There's a blog that kind of shows all the different things that we're coming out with. And it's the Office 365 blog. And I'll pull that up when we're done with the session. But it'll tell you what we're releasing. So like I had mentioned previously, for those placeholders for OneDrive, that's something that's going to be pushed out in a current channel here in a couple months' time. And then obviously all of the inking that we're doing and investing in these applications is huge. Collaboration has been something that's been asked for not only in the cloud applications, but also for your local applications as well. So, and what I mean by collaboration is now I can open up a document, have it exposed to multiple people, and I can see on that document who is actually collaborating on that. And that's either online or that's on the local version of Office as well.
Who's doing that today? So how many people are co-editing Word documents, for example? Okay, so you've used it? All right. Because we could certainly do that back and forth right now if you wanted to, if you hadn't seen it before. But the reality is, right, he can create a document, share with me, and I can start editing it at the same time he's editing it. So that's a very cool feature.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can show it. Do you want to just create some random file and send it to me?
Yeah.
The other thing I would, I had something else to say about Word. I need to remember what it was. Hopefully it will come to me while we're collaborating.
This is similar to Google Docs.
It is.
Correct.
It's exactly
Absolutely. A lot of people don't know you can do this, so it's the same idea. But he can send me this, right? And then we can be real-time editing at the same time.
So it has to be on the web
Nope,
version?
it doesn't.
Nope.
It's the same. I'm just doing it because it's quicker right now. I'm gonna have to send it, but it's virtually the same thing in terms of watching the real time.
So I am not on the web version, so we can try this out. I'm on my client version. I'm not on Office 365 right now. I'm on the downloaded version, and he's on Office 365.
I don't remember seeing that share button.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
So if
Where's
we,
the share on yours? So you said you're on their desktop. If you wanted to share this now from your desktop, is there a share option, or do you have to be in the website to do the initial sharing?
You don't. So let me bring that up real fast. So see on the top right? So this may have a lot to do with the version of Office or Office 365 that you guys are currently on, right? And that has a lot to do with it. If you're getting these things real time or in a current branch, actually this has been out for a while, so even if you're on a delayed branch, you should have this share button that I'm showing you here. I'm in the regular version of Office. I can share it just like I did online, and I can invite somebody to this document and show real-time collaboration. So so you see Dale typing real time right now. He's on the on-premise Word document right now. I'm on the cloud, and I can see it just the same if I was in Word. Yeah.
So when you share it, do you, like, if I wanted to share it with you, would I need to have like your email, or do I just put a name?
Put a name, because you're all dealing with, see that's the idea, is you're all within a tenant of Office 365. Tenant meaning you're all in Office 365. You all have a directory that you're working from, because you're all email. You all have email through it. So now everything is interconnected, which makes it nice. So I'm just plugging Dale's name in, recognizes it, you're off and running. That's it. Or I can search the directory if I wanted to, the entire directory. But that is going to be, you know the name that you're sharing it with, right? So it just makes it easier. So you guys saw the collaboration, yes, ma'am?
So this is only as long as we're both on Office 365 version of Word.
Correct. This is Office 365. This is the new version of Word. Now, yes, because the engagement of the collaboration is happening through the cloud is the way I'm able to do that, this is a perfect example. He's on premise, right? He's just on his machine, but he's still connected through the cloud because his application is being fed or being updated through the cloud, right? His local application. And I'm on the web. This is a web client. Yes, ma'am?
Is there any advantage to
sharing the Microsoft Word document versus uploading the Word document into OneDrive and sharing via OneDrive? Or what do you recommend?
I will never, I would recommend always going through OneDrive. I never share anything locally, right? I will always share something from OneDrive. It's just a good habit. I have lost too many computers and too much information, so I always make it a point to save to OneDrive as a habit. It's just my default that it gets saved to.
Actually, I meant for real-time collaboration like you've just been doing.
So if it's a Word document, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where I save it to, but I'm just saying as a practice, I always save to OneDrive, and then I will share it out at that point.
And then do the real-time editing.
I mean, you could do it both ways. Like I said, it doesn't matter. But OneDrive, just for consistency, I default to everything. When I create it, automatically gets saved to OneDrive. It's just good practice. And it's, the idea when you start seeing more modern devices like this, right? I mean, this is our Surface Pro 4, but you're going to start seeing, like the iPad, they don't have access to the hard drive anymore. So you start losing documents. You start, these things go down with the hard drive. Making cloud storage your number one priority, I think, is the biggest thing that I preach every day, because you're not going to see the same type of devices that you see today or 5 years ago, 3 years ago for that matter, where you can get the hard drive and plug it back in. It's just not going to be the way we go anymore. Yeah.
So I guess kind of backing off of her question, I can share a document with somebody through OneDrive.
Yep.
But I then also have to share that document this way to be able to do so by sharing it through OneDrive, it automatically allows us to do this. Okay, so it's not having to do it twice.
Yep. Exactly.
Can you do this through Excel as well, or just Word?
Excel is available as well. Yeah, so collaboration is a big thing that we're, it was made available for online. That's been available for a while, just kind of like your Google Apps were. But for on-premise applications or the Office apps local to the machine, that's something that's been a little bit more recent. Any questions around Office? And again, that also incorporates OneNote, and Dale talked about this and did a great job setting it up. Everybody seems to be pretty familiar with OneNote. This is, to me, and I've used Evernote, and I've used quite a few different digital notebook taking applications. You can see, my entire life, you can see all the notebooks that I have set up. It's, I can tell you this, it's great for a couple of reasons. One, all the notes are easily searchable, so if I need to go and find something in here based on all the information, I've got one single source that I have. It's being backed up. I can get it on any one of my devices at all. And I use it for personal and for business, right? So I've got, my Surface information here. You can see how I broke out my Surface, but I mean, you've got kind of the entire gamut on how you want to break these things up. But it's nice because I know if I want to go and get any technical information, I can go ahead and continue to add to these things. But I also have the Ferrari garden, right? So here's my garden, and I've got all my internal information here exposed, and if I want what plants I have planted, where I'm getting all of my stuff, watering seasons, things like that. It's all available in one app. Now I don't have to have it all exposed here. I can remove as many notebooks as I want to, but it's nice to have things conveniently packed in one application for all my note taking. I use the pen a lot, which is nice. And then you start talking about the other things that you can do. They may or may not be relevant, but again, I can pull spreadsheets in. I can take a PDF document, immediately print it into my OneNote notebook, real time, and then I can modify it with my pen. Or I just have the image there. This is nothing more than a URL that I took from a website. I pasted it in here, and it immediately puts the video in for me. Right? That's kind of the idea. It's again, by far the best notebooking app. People get scared, and I consistently see this as the number one response. It's just intimidating because there's so much to do. That I agree. Start small. Create one single notebook. Create it around whatever your hobby is or your single class, and break that out into the different classes that you have by time. Obviously we see this heavy in K through 12. Makes a lot of sense. How I can expose homework if I want to go completely digital. But this is great just to share information over a teleprompter if I want to, if I want to ink and show it real time to folks or show videos. I can plan out my class well before, and then I can, do everything from OneNote and then make it available. I can hide everything and just make the single page available on the screen itself. Like I said, I've got all my inking capability, can erase, makes it super convenient. And then you start talking about things like inserting, right? So I can insert online videos, as you see here, spreadsheets, but I can also do audio recording, which I think is cool. Now, you know, if I like to dictate, that makes it really nice. So I just put the recording in there, it will insert that into the OneNote, and I can go back and access it after the fact. If you're grading and you use OneNote, that makes it nice because it's, you know, especially if you're doing foreign languages, a lot of times we see folks doing that using recorded audio, inserting that in as feedback or I'm inserting my homework as recorded audio in OneNote as well, which makes sense if you're in a foreign language, right? A little difficult to do that on paper. Dale made mention to learning tools. This is awesome, and you can see Microsoft is investing heavily in education and especially around learning disabilities. So, you know, take, for instance, let me get to any one of these that actually makes sense here. If I can get a lot of writing here. So here, you know, again, for folks that have dyslexia or any other type of learning disability, I have the ability now to, you know, look at a document. I can now use and create the immersive reader, right? So this learning tools is a download. You can just type in any one of your favorite search engines, OneNote learning tools. And what this allows me to do is now take that document that I was looking at. I have the ability, I don't think we're going to be able to play it. I don't have speakers. Oh yeah, we do. So it will repeat that back to me. So then I've got dictation. I can then, you know, if you think about where people typically have issues, it's going to be around vision. So I can change the font size relatively quickly. Spacing of the words is huge for folks, especially with certain disabilities. And then obviously the actual color background is heavily important for folks that have certain issues with glare or are reading certain colors or print on different backgrounds. So those are nice, right, when you think about where we focused our efforts. And you're seeing a lot more of this inputted into Microsoft Word is a huge one where you'll see a lot of these learning tools incorporated. That's another huge investment we're making. And then you take comprehension in, right? So now you know, this is a great way to learn. It might not be applicable to higher ed, right? You've probably gone through a lot of these, but think about the investment that you can make on your kids, right? I want to learn the different syllables in these words, nouns, verbs, adjectives. And then I can also change the dictation or the speed of the voice. So this is great. I take my kids through this now. My boy has autism, but this is awesome for him to learn to read on, right? Because he just has certain challenges in different areas. And he loves this because he's starting to pick up on words and again, he definitely has a challenge with book and small print is his biggest issue. So I take passages from websites, put them into OneNote, and then I take them through the learning tools and I give him the ability to ink, and he can spend all day on there. The other piece of this that is nice is that I have dictation built in, right? So I can then, you know, dictate. It'll pull everything that I'm saying into this particular document. You'll see that it's listening now. It's going to pull all the dictation or everything that I'm doing real time, which makes that
That's
really
great
cool.
for grading notes.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Is this available in the normal OneNote?
When you say normal OneNote, the OneNote Online, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
the web
one that we
version?
get through the university. I'm not sure.
This is accessible to you too. This is a free download. So this is the local application. And let me add some clarity around that. So what she had mentioned is there's a OneNote. If I go back to my Waffle really quickly, you can see that OneNote is available here. This is OneNote Online. Similar to how we had Word Online, Excel Online. This is an area where we consistently are updating this. We're making a lot of investment on here. But there are some areas, in this particular case, like dictation or the learning tool add-on, that is not exposed or available in OneNote Online today. So you would have to use the on-premise application, the OneNote, which is free, right? It's accessible to you. You guys can use it. There's a lot of there's sharing that obviously goes on between the local and the online one, but for the add-ons, I need to use the local OneNote version.
I wanted to highlight something that when you just touched on it was what I was going to say before I forgot. We are starting to see, because of the ease of sharing and transmitting documents and sharing documents. So like at Arizona State for distance learning, they do all their grading digitally now. So somebody submits a PDF, they get their pen out. This is in engineering. They comment accordingly on the problem sets, and then send it back. So everything is done actually on a surface with a pen. So there's no paper involved in that process. And to Anthony's point, like that's where you can start to go here. Doing, you could, as you said, somebody said in the back, you could record the notes if you wanted to also, instead of writing them. For my writing, it would be better to record certainly than write them on there. And practically in my life, this is what, I spend a lot of my time on the road. This is how I work with my 7th grader on his essays. So he'll write his essay on Tuesday. I'll look at it and be like, this needs some work. So I'll start to circle it, put more here, you need more support, etc. I send it back to him. So we have, this ongoing dialogue with me writing on his papers with pen. But it's the same principle.
Okay.
Is pen available on just a regular computer, or do you have to have a?
You have to have a touch. You have to have a touch sensitive computer, right?
With a digitizer.
Digitizer.
So there are certainly products available that are not surfaces that have that. They are not. You will not find any Apple products outside of iPads that have that. So so you can start to narrow things down. So Mac doesn't have that. Windows does have it across. Basically anybody has it now on the higher end machines. So digitizers cost money to add. So you won't tend to find it you won't always find it in a lower cost machine, but you might. But yes, the pen is becoming more and more pervasive, certainly in Windows machines.
Anybody use Sway in here by any chance? You guys familiar with that? I'm going to quickly go through this, but it's a cool application. You can only get it on this platform. And if anybody uses PowerPoint today and they want to spice things up a little bit, this is actually cool too, right? So this is actually a good example of being on a service. So right now I opened up Sway. I haven't opened it up for a long time, but you can see now that Office 365 is notifying me that there are new functions that are added to this application. So when you start seeing these things when you open up apps after a while, or just every other week or so, this will show you the different functions that are coming out new, and I consistently get these. And that's the beauty of a service, right? So you can go in, you can check out what these actually mean, or go to the Office 365 blog, or go to the help section, and it will tell you exactly what was added to these things. But you'll consistently see these things in the apps. Sway, it's basically PowerPoint on steroids. That's kind of the idea. I mean, if you take anything home, it's the ability now to, it creates basically a web application, or a web PowerPoint is the best way. And then I'll open one of these up. But the idea is I can now create these different sways, or PowerPoints, but it makes them interactive, right? So I can, in this case, you can see how beautiful the layout is on this and the different storylines. I can create a play this, right? So I can play a video in this, or share different tutorials. I can navigate from left to right or top to bottom, however I want to set up my sway. But again, it gets you away or out of your typical PowerPoint document. I can quickly share these out and make them expose them online. And again, just a different way of looking at PowerPoint documents, and obviously getting the eyeballs attentive on some of the things that you're doing, as opposed to the old way we're doing things. PowerPoint's still great, does a lot of great things. This is more of your online method, more of a web page that you create. And then there's an archive or area where you can share all these out and make them accessible to folks. Or you can just use your typical share functionality that's also available in PowerPoint. Yes?
So if you have like a template that you use, can you move that into Sway? Okay. Are you ready to ask a question?
For PowerPoint, is that what you're talking about?
Like,
Or?
say we have a standard PowerPoint template we want to use, but we want to have a similar look and feel. Can we move that into Sway as well? Or is this more like a...
As far as I know, you can't move a template in. You can create your own. I don't think you can take an existing template in PowerPoint. Now, you could quickly modify that and take a screenshot. I'm trying to think of how the templates are actually created and what that extension is on the document. It's a little bit different. This is kind of a consistent single slide, if you will.
Like a storyboard.
It's a storyboard.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
that's exactly what it is. So the concept of a template doesn't necessarily exist with Sway.
The reason we have to use templates is we have sort of like approved branding that.
Yes.
From the.
But you could pull in the logo and the colors. You could
Yeah.
absolutely do that.
Yeah, that's I think what.
That would be it, yeah. But it wouldn't take the template like for like.
So we have 10 minutes left.
Okay.
Go ahead. I was gonna ask
Sway.com,
questions, yeah.
that's the idea, and this is an easy way to go and play with it. And the other thing is PowerPoint is gotten, I don't want to say complex, that's not, but it's robust. This gives you a couple of different things that you can do, quickly grabs animations or things from the web and allows you to apply them. So you want to talk about ways that I think you want to minimize things a little bit and make it a little bit more minimal. This is awesome, and it's just beautiful in terms of looking at it and previewing this information, and then quickly you can share this information out. So I recommend anybody that does a lot of PowerPoint work, strongly recommend just taking a look at this. You got it accessible to you. It's only available in this ecosystem that you're on, and you can get this app on all of your devices as well, which also makes it convenient and nice. Yes.
It has the same function that you can build notes into it if you wanted to.
Yep. All that is available with these. And like I said, there's a couple of things that you will get here. Like here's the cards that you can add, groups, different imagery, audio, things of that nature. So you can see there's similarities with PowerPoint because you can kind of do a lot of these things. PowerPoint is a static document that you ultimately would have. This is basically a living web document, if you will.
So the most important thing then is, if I start using this and I go to do a presentation somewhere, am I going to be able to use it?
Yeah, because it's a website.
Okay.
Yeah,
So it functions on the web, right? So that's awesome.
that's the beauty of it, yeah.
So you would just log into your.
Office 365.
And then
Yep, it's just like one of your documents that you've been using. Ultimately, it's a sway now that's attached to you, and you just play and you're on your way.
And can you download it like you can, like a Word document or something like that?
You can, yeah, you can. All right.
And we want to, I don't know if we want to close out and ask questions.
We might want to do teams since we kind of
Okay.
built this up.
And what is flow? Real quick.
Flow is, and I apologize because I don't use Flow that often, but it's an automation tool ultimately. So it's a business process automation tool which allows me to connect to different applications. Like I'll give you an example. I want to, every time I get an email from somebody, I want to immediately create something in another application. I can connect these two different systems with this process tool, ultimately what it is. I apologize because I don't use this that often. I'm a Surface subject matter expert, but why don't you come up here after and we'll talk a little bit more about Flow. Let me talk about Teams really fast because I know we only got about 10 minutes, and then we'll close up with any questions that you have. Teams, extremely new that we've just offered. There's a huge amount of investment coming into Microsoft Teams. Again, you're going to see a similar theme around collaboration, around Yammer that we've talked about. Groups was also mentioned. This is kind of an aggregate of a lot of those things. So you'll see some consolidation, I believe, over time. Groups is easy for individuals to set up. So if you think about, I'll share a group with you and kind of just give you an example. Here's my Surface group that I share with other individual TSPs in this case. This group, I invited multiple members, or multiple members were invited. I was actually one of them. We broke this group out then to different areas of the country, right? But you can obviously imagine within a project or within a group, you could break it out in whatever different way. We've given everybody access to this group and all groups or subgroups within it. But within a group, so I'll just take you to the general one, we all communicate through the general area here. And now, so similar to Yammer, you see a communication thread here, right? So now we're all collaborating with one another, asking different questions. I can quickly search through any one of these conversations. It'll bring up the relevant information. I can add emojis and I can add different imagery here. So like I said, you'll see a lot of similarities with things like Yammer. The idea here, this is personalized for individuals to use and set up for groups, smaller groups typically is what you'll see. But if you want to add or expose this to thousands of people, you absolutely could. Within the groups, I have things like files, right? So similar to Yammer, you have an area for files that you can now access. So as part of this general group, I know that if I need to go and find a file related to a bug or to surface accessibility or something of that nature, I can come in here, and granted it's been exposed by somebody because this is the kind of a general area that we all work from, or team that we work from. OneNote. So what you'll see oftentimes is a single OneNote or multiple OneNotes are accessible, similar to Yammer. We now made OneNote available to where we're all communicating off of a single OneNote, which makes this nice. And then I can download this notebook into my individual notebook that I leverage as well. So that makes it convenient as well. And then, so here's another notebook that was added, a first-party hardware notebook. So I can add as many notebooks as I want, right? Which is different than Yammer for that instance, because Yammer has a single notebook that's attached to it. And then I have the ability to add different add-ons or different things to this particular team, which is also unique to it, right? And we'll consistently add more and more things like, so Dropbox, maybe I want to make a Dropbox here. Here's the interconnectedness of this. Maybe I want to create a Power BI dashboard specific to this team. That's also a huge difference between this and Yammer or things like groups, right? So you can see the different types of tabs that I can add here. Maybe I have a YouTube video share that I want to add specific to Surface. So this is kind of the mecca of collaboration, if you will. It's kind of the idea. I don't have any insights to whether you'll see everything kind of shift its way to Teams and no longer maybe use applications or investment not go into different areas, but you can see the overlap. I'm not going to sit here and say there isn't, right? This is where our investment is going. You can see there's additional functionality built into Teams. And it's extremely easy to do and add. So here's the activity, so I can see if somebody has mentioned me in a particular post. It's going to show me all my activity that's focused on me. Here are the different chats that I'm involved in, right? So I know that I've been involved in certain chats. If I want to go back to them, rather than search for these different chats, hey, I know that I was included on one or I interacted in one, so I can go back to those. Any meetings or apps that are associated with me within Teams are also accessible here. In addition, Teams is available on all of your devices, so we're going cross-platform with everything. That's obviously a common theme. I don't think there's anything I've talked about today where you're not seeing cross-collaboration or cross-platform accessibility. Obviously, that's very purposely done. We know that you guys are using different applications or different devices, so we want to make it accessible on all. And there is a client here that you can download for your devices that will allow Teams to be real-time, just like Word or Excel or things like that. So we offer a local client if you don't want to access this from the web. You prefer clients on your device. So that's it in a nutshell. We went through a lot. We've got 3 more minutes. Does anybody want to ask any questions that are looming that are out there? Cool. Thank you guys. Thank you for your time.